Did you see what happened in the UK today with Tommy Robinson? I already know you did. This is what we set up, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to the degree that I understand it, there's been a reporting suppression by the judge so as not to influence the jury. And so Tommy was engaging in illegal reporting, basically, and is now facing 13 months in prison. Do I have that correct?
Yes, I believe that is correct. This dude, what's his name? Cowlin Robertson? I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not.
Yeah.
But he had actually tweeted out a tweet about it, and then all of a sudden he had to delete it because it's against the law to talk about it now in the UK. Let's see, Will Chamberlain had a long thread on it.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, they have the worst free speech laws ever.
Now, apparently he had some like suspended sentence, Tom, for a similar incident last year or year before last.
Yes.
And they reinstated that, Tom, and I think that was 9 months, I want to say. And then they ended up adding some more time on it, and then they put out an order, the judge did, where they can't talk about it in the press until the end of the case that he was outside the courthouse covering himself, if I'm understanding it correctly.
It's truly bizarre. I mean, as many have pointed out, and I don't know if this is true or whether this is exaggeration, but if Tommy Robinson goes to prison, he might very well be going to his death. That there are going to be many people in prison who recognize him. I mean, he's one of the most recognizable right-wing figures in the UK, and that they're going to harass him, beat the shit out of him, perhaps kill him. Which, again, I don't know exactly if that's true or not, or if that's a salacious exaggeration, but it's serious.
Well, I would hate to be in his spot. Let's just put it that way. Especially with, like you said, he's a well-known person in the British tabloids. His face is everywhere, and there are likely to be some dangerous Muslim gentlemen there in prison. Now, surely they'll protect him. I mean, at least you would hope. It would be a bad look if he actually did get killed in jail. So.
I think it would. I mean, that would really be creating a martyr. I mean, I think people like me would put aside our criticisms of Tommy Robinson, of which I have many, if he is treated like that, just basically thrown into a meat grinder. So, yeah, I mean, he's a brave guy. I mean, for all his faults, he's no question a brave man. And again, I think he's engaging. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He's engaging in a kind of civil disobedience. And it's just, again, I get the rationale of you're not trying to create a, outraged media environment or something like this. But just in this day and age, this suppression of reporting just reeks of the suppression of knowledge of this case, of this grooming gang case. It just rings hollow. Whatever justification there is, it just simply rings hollow.
It's just outrageous for them to even try that in this day and age. If this was whenever they passed this law, I think it was 81 or something. Okay, I can slightly understand why you might think you'll be able to get away with that. But now with the instantaneous worldwide social media and stuff like that, it's baffling, honestly. But they do that. I'll tell you a story. So my wife actually lives in London. She's flying over here tomorrow. Yeah. But when I was going to London the first time, Elton John, he was in a scandal where the dude he was dating or married to, I think they're married or whatever. I don't fucking know. And his husband had cheated on him in a vat of olive oil with some other dude. I don't know. It was pure. It was pure insanity. And so while I was on the plane flying to the UK, I was like, I'm just going to write up a quick blog post about this just for shits and giggles. And I wrote it up. And by the time I had landed on the ground in the UK, I had gotten a notice from a firm that he had hired telling me that I was in violation of UK law and that I needed to take that post down immediately or I was going to get sued.
Good God.
Yeah, that actually happened to me personally. And part of me wanted to just leave it up in the air because technically when I posted it, I was in international airspace. I wasn't even in the
right.
UK. But I just went ahead and took it down because, he's got deep pockets, and I really couldn't afford to be going to court with Elton John if he actually did want to do something. Now,
right.
Maybe it was.
He might literally throw you into a big pot of olive oil.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm just saying he's got the money to do a long lawsuit, whereas I can't do it. Even 20, 30 grand, that's going to be a big problem. Whereas him, that's just a few royalty checks. So
right.
If that one royalty check probably. But yeah, that actually happened to me personally. So that's the kind of stuff they do. That stuff over there, it's fairly common.
It's bizarre. I'm not far from an expert on the UK legal system, so I hate to even talk about this, but. When you think about it, the concept of a jury of your peers in the United States, it's in a way become the opposite of its original intent. Its original intent was that you would be tried by your peers, that is, people who know you or know of you.
Right.
And now it's been transformed into almost the opposite. And it just, I don't know. It just, again, in this day and age of our ability to get just tons of information out there, and for whole narratives to start changing with through social media and so on, it does seem just a bizarre law. Just it goes against where we are right now, because a lot of narratives I can remember as a young kid, the Rodney King trial and so on that actually led up to the LA riots. And I was young. I was probably like 11 or 12 at the time. I guess you guys probably weren't even born.
No, I was actually, how did you say you were last time we were here?
I am now 40 years old.
Yeah, so I'm 32. So I was very young, but I actually do remember a little bit of the Rodney King stuff, even though I was super young, because it was that big of a deal, like the tapes and the beat. Yeah, so.
And it was a total psyop. Like all of those images were shown. All of the images that were shown on local news and the nightly news and all that kind of stuff, they were shown over and over again, were the images of after the fact, after Rodney King had just totally chimped out and attacked police and gone nuts. They were suppressing Rodney King, and whatever you want to say about where our culture now and where we are, it's obviously not good. But one thing is that I think narratives at least have a chance to be changed. People would have gotten a hold of the full video and started focusing in on it and like taking deep dives into what exactly happened. Whereas, in 91 or whatever it was, we were still in this kind of monolithic media environment where that just wasn't possible. But anyway, just a news blackout. I agree. It's just bizarre.
Well, back then, whatever you were fed by the mainstream media, like there was really no other way. I mean, AM radio, even that conservative radio wasn't. It was kind of in its infancy back then, so there really was no, alternate narrative. Maybe like a Ron Paul newsletter or something like that. That would really be the extent of it. Let me ask you, you said you had some criticisms of Tommy Robinson. What would those be exactly?
Well, I mean, ideologically speaking, he seems to focus on the Quran to a very large degree, as if Islam itself is the fundamental issue. And I'm not saying this like I'm a great fan of Islam or Muslims, but it is ultimately a kind of PC way of criticizing mass immigration and multiculturalism and white dispossession, is to quote Quran verses about how horrifying this religion is and so on. And, again, as many liberals will tell you, you can find plenty of examples of genocide and mountains of foreskins and rape and torture and incest in the Old Testament, or, and he seems to be fine with that. It's just this idea that all of these Muslims are like dutifully reading the Quran and then enacting Quranic verses in real life or something. It's wrong, and it's ultimately a PC way of criticizing him. I mean, the grooming gang culture, the culture of the grooming gang is it's a Asian, as they say in the UK. It's an Arab, Middle Eastern cultural aspect. It's not like it's, you know, they're not doing that just because they just happen to read the Quran. Most of them have never read the Quran, and there are serious problems with, you know, Christian immigration from Africa and so on. It just, he kind of gets into this wrong way of thinking about it. He's not really going after the problem. And also, even if you were be able to convert all of these people to, you know, secular humanism or whatever he wants, there's still the same fundamental problem. So it's a kind of non-identitarian approach towards dealing with this issue. And then there's also this just kind of, you know, uncritical support of Israel and so on. He's, you know, if I were to get into a debate with him, there would be plenty that I would criticize. But again, I'll save that for another day. I mean, he's under attack. Totally shit on him
the day he got put in jail for over a year. Yeah,
exactly. I'm not going to be like, yeah, he was put in jail. That's good. Put that neocon in jail or something. No, that's total nonsense. I mean, you know, I hate when people do that. I mean, he's being put in jail for the wrong reasons. Although that sounded bad too. He's not. They're putting him in jail for the same reasons that they would put me in jail. Right. They're putting him in jail for the same reasons, ultimately, that why I am banned from the UK since 2016. I mean, it is, yeah. The UK is the worst.
What was the official reasoning they gave for your banning from the UK?
Oh, it's total nonsense. It was Theresa May, by the way. It happened before Brexit. I think maybe a month before Brexit or so. And it was when Theresa May was the Interior Secretary, or a title like that. So it was actually sent from her office. Yeah, she was the
Home Secretary, I believe, yeah.
Home Secretary, yeah. And they basically just quoted a bunch of speeches that I've given, including one or two that I've given in London. So I a couple of times appeared as a speaker with the Traditional Britain Group, which is really a oh my gosh, it's a very posh group. I mean, it's a you know, upper middle class and maybe even landed gentry kind of snooty society, and I mean that in the best way. Like I loved giving talks to them. They would take place in very nice venues. Everyone there was great. But I was banned for, you know, inspiring hatred among the communities, was, I believe, the phrase. And, you know, the idea that my attending this club-like atmosphere and giving a talk about Europe, or I think I talked about America and the problems with Americanism, which was I was a receptive audience for that one. It was the idea that I was inspiring racial outrages or something is total nonsense. But yeah, it was basically words. I mean, there was no allegation that I've been trafficking drugs or I'm going around punching, you know, Pakistanis in the street or something. I mean, there's not even a hint that I was doing something like that. It was words, basically. And I don't know. I mean, the UK is really far gone. I mean, we like to focus on Sweden, or Germany is certainly a far gone place, and so on. But I think the UK is really the worst. And there doesn't seem to be any real opposition. I mean, there was the British National Party, and that was a real thing that was, you know, making inroads into the European Parliament. Nick Griffin was a public figure and all these kinds of things. And he's faded a bit as his party has faded. And there were some problems of, you know, kind of insider dealing and nepotism and all this kind of stuff. But nevertheless, that party has faded. The UKIP came in and took all of their thunder. Basically, all of that energy, that right-wing anti-establishment, and kind of id impulse energy as well. That all went towards UKIP, and it went against the European Union. It went to Nigel Farage and so on. And UKIP ostensibly won. I mean, Brexit won out.
Yeah, and if you look now, even UKIP itself has collapsed, and pretty much all that's went back to the Conservative Party. Yeah,
it's collapsed below where the BNP was. I mean, it's not a viable party anymore. It was ruined by its success, and in the process, British nationalism or even English nationalism or something like this has just totally collapsed. There's not, in all these other countries, there are at least viable, right-wing nationalist parties, as imperfect as they are and maybe as out of power as they are, they still at least exist. And the United States, we're in a different system. We're in this big two-party system where, it's going to be difficult for us to have a third party. But nevertheless, there's a huge culture of nationalism or what have you in the United States. But in Britain, I mean, it's hard to name a significant figure. And Tommy Robinson was kind of it at this point. I mean, it is that.